Hello, everybody. Welcome to the LED series. Today we have Dr. Arvind Padhi. He's an IS officer from 1996 batch. He's a master in agriculture sciences from BHU. He is a PhD holder from IARI and is a master in public administration from University of Birmingham, UK. He has been a very I would say, uh, a very capable officer during his career in as collector and then in different positions. He has been awarded as the best collector, and he has been working currently. He has been nominated as the National Advisor Panel on Agriculture Nutrition under Poshan Abhiyan. I don't think we can have a better person than him to talk about food systems and local economy development, today's topic. And I would, without taking much time, I would come straight to the subject, and I would request him for our audience to define and to decode further for us what is food systems in the context of COVID as well as in the context of local economic development to you. Over to you, Dr. Padhi.
Thank you, Kirtiji, for this opportunity. But before that, your question is very contextual, as you told in the present scenario. It's a very good question to start the conversation with. In fact, the food system, also the sustainable food system, is a buzzword now. In the development space, you are a development practitioner, much in the policy circles. This particular phrase is now under use. And as you know, in 2021, the UN Food System Summit is being held. Now we are passing through a health crisis and a very unprecedented situation. So this particular topic of food systems and the local economy development that you have chosen, I'm very excited to converse you with. You asked what is the food system in the present day context. So the three constituents of food systems are the food supply chain, the food environment, and the consumer behavior. Maybe we can discuss later during the conversation in detail. Why they are relevant today or in the present day context? As you know, the agriculture, more so the Indian agriculture has, I mean, if you ask me the biggest challenge for the agriculture sector, it is the climate change. You know it better. And then the challenge of malnutrition adds to this burden. And now the COVID-19 exacerbates this particular situation. So the lockdown during the pandemic has raised serious concerns on the reduced access of nutritious food for the vulnerable sections, and therefore this calls for affirmative actions to make safe and nutritious food available, accessible, and affordable for the larger mass. In this context, the transformation of food systems is absolutely essential to tackle these twin challenges of climate change and malnutrition. The good news is that consumers across the spectrum, you would have noticed, they now increasingly want to adopt diets to boost their immune systems during this pandemic, and I wish this trend continues. So, just to sum up, the sustainable food system should be the policy priority for the government of the day and even for the future.
Right, right. So you put it very well, like there cannot be a bigger topic at this context in terms of food systems. I would still try to understand when we go back to food systems. I think agriculture is very much linked to it, and hence the farming community and our topic local economic development automatically comes up as an important topic. So when you look at food systems, let's start from the bottom. How you really look at what is current kind of challenges you see and what all we need so that we start making our local systems much stronger.
Okay, I come back to the original topic, the local economy development that the
Yeah.
ECOCIAT has chosen. So whenever we speak about a sustainable food system, it necessarily points at the food environment that affects the accessibility, availability, affordability, and the cultural aspects of the food system.
Right.
Means we are talking about a healthy, nutritious, and safe food.
Right.
And in the Indian context, we mean growing and consuming healthy food locally. So this this will build up opportunities for the market appetite. Moreover, operationalizing local procurement of cereals, pulses, millets, and other nutritious food items for the government programs like either the ICDS or the MDM, they will not only achieve the nutritional outcomes, but also they will create livelihood opportunities for the farmers or the poor persons or the people living in the rural areas. So because they will be engaged in the production, processing, or the value addition or the supply of these items to this thing. So to sum up, a sustainable food system promotion would definitely boost up the local economy. That's how I perceive this particular subject.
Right, right. No, so in that case, everybody's again going back to the nutrition agenda as far as food. Let me start from there. Do you think we need to look at local food systems from nutrition angle, and also how we encourage or how we see the traditional food systems? For example, government has millet mission. We know traditionally we are consumers, or at least using a lot of millets, but last 30-40 years we have started moving out from there. We used to consume certain oils which are from our own clusters or geographies. Now those things have started moving out from our scenario, but scientists to policymakers have started looking at the traditional food systems and local production systems are used to be very closely knitted, and that used to give the nutrition content what was important for our people very much. So in that context, again from the local, the traditional food systems and the traditional production system, how relevant and how do you see that to be integrated into our approach?
I'm happy that you asked that question, and it's very relevant. And Kirti, you would have noticed that every positive realization has come to the minds of all actors of the food system, whether it is the policymaker or the civil society or the farmer producers or even the food processors or traders. Every one of us, now we have realized about the importance of the traditional Indian food system. That's a very good news, because they have been very healthy and nutritious and good to boost the immunity to fight against right now against the COVID-19 or any other disease for that matter. Balancing of the local food system in India requires the repurposing of the existing food and agricultural policies. You are aware, and it is no secret, that the underlying policy regime like the minimum support price or the public distribution system, coupled with the subsidies on the irrigation, power, or the agri inputs, they are basically skewed in favor of the big two staples. I mean, rice and wheat. And that's how maybe even though the MSP mechanism exists for the climate resilient or the nutritious cereals like sorghum or the other millet crops, it is practically ineffective because of this policy bias. I think you will admit that.
Yeah.
So the crop diversification is often suggested to correct such legacy incentives. But unless the farmer's income from these alternate crops, suppose we would advise a farmer to go for millet crops or any other crop, if the income from the alternate scenario would not be more or the same, then he may not switch over. So that the policy suitable for financial incentives during this transition mechanism or the value chain strengthening and the efforts to change the consumer behavior would be key. But we are all moving towards the traditional Indian food system, which is a very good news.
Yeah, that's of course a very good news. And we have so much of agroecological zones and patterns linked to a food system. I think time has come to go back to that. One question which comes from one of my colleagues to ask you, while I think the changing scenario will be well tapped by private sector or big companies, they would definitely are the first one to see the change, and they will adopt better ways to really reach out to these systems. What is your advice? Because you have also in a very eminent position as the country representative from ICRISAT, and you've been working on different models linking to entrepreneurship development and incubations and all that. From that perspective, when you look at local food systems, do you have any suggestions for the local entrepreneurs to really take the lead role in building this. Of course, we'll come to private sector, but at the bottom level, at the local level, what are your advices for the local entrepreneurs or programs which are encouraging this kind of models to come up?
That's a very good question. Let me be very frank. Local entrepreneurship has to come up, and we need to promote them. And I come from a CG institute, the ICRISAT, which is involved in research both upstream and the downstream and the outreach activities to promote such crops. We call them as smart food, as you know. They are good for the consumer, good for the farmer, because the potential to enhance the yield also is quite huge. And from the environmental point of view, they are also good for the planet. So we call them a smart food, and we wish that the promotion is still faster. You told how do we promote the local entrepreneurship, and also the private sector has to be there. You know, without private sector participation, without linking the farmer to the market, maybe we would not realize the goal that we are aiming for. And you are absolutely right. When even before the present pandemic, the ongoing health crisis, the demand for natural and organic products in India was on the rise. I think you would admit that. And availability of organic foodstuff and products grown under the natural agriculture systems, they have increased manifold. Evidence is also true, and you would have seen how there is a competition amongst even the MNCs also to come back to this particular food system, which is in food items which are in high demand from the consumers.
Right.
Post-pandemic, as we discussed some time back, the demand for high-value agricultural products such as fruits, vegetables, dairy products, eggs, they are going to increase. So the focus of production, therefore, should ideally cater to this growing need of a health-conscious population. People are growing health-conscious. Of course, now it is confined to the urban space or the aspirational segments of the population. But in the days to come, I mean, the general population also would change. But you asked as to how could we promote it through local entrepreneurship.
Yes. Yes.
If I understand correctly, as I told you, the consumer behavior change would be a great factor in this transformation. Why do I say so? Because to reach the desired levels of the dietary diversity through consumption of locally available nutritionally rich food, consumer education or the nutrition literacy is an essential prerequisite. Because now people know that if I consume millets, they are good for me, they are more rich in micronutrients. But in the larger segment, if we wish to kind of reach to everybody, then we need to promote this. You would have noticed that there is an increasing demand for products low in salt or sodium or sugar or saturated fat. But it is mostly confined to the urban consumers, as I told, and the aspirational educated mass. But the post-COVID period, this could be an opportunity. This could be an opportunity for the government to push its agenda to change for such a healthy and nutritious diet diversity, both in rural and urban areas. So that will, once the behavior change comes by the government policies, maybe the local entrepreneurs would automatically benefit from the system. And to create such a consumer interest in a food system with low health risks, government must create a massive awareness campaign. As I told, there are few going on now, right? Eat Right India and few others are going on for behavioral change. However, such campaigns are necessary, but they are not sufficient. You have been in the development space. You know that there are cultural factors, there are food preferences, there is a taste factor, affordability, and many others. So we should not say that, you know, if we make a big campaign on the consumer behavior change, on nutrition literacy, everything will change. No, we have to also see the cultural aspect. So the government programs like ICDS, MDM, I told you some time back, they are the best possible delivery channels because they are very huge programs. If we make, if we integrate healthier or nutritious food products into this particular government delivery channels, that will also be very useful. And you also said biofortification has also been tried. I do not know. The empirical evidences say that there has not been much significant outcome in each of the cases. But by fortification of food materials could also be tried.
Lovely, lovely. So very quickly, a quick answer from you, because you are linking the local food system to consumers, perhaps even in the urban setup. One challenge every forum we've been listening is the standards and the safety aspect of the food. The moment we take it through a value chain approach, supply chain approach to the larger consumer base, What is your suggestion? What are the things happening? Any insight on that aspect?
Yes, again, a very important question. Food safety also is a growing concern amongst all of us. And if whenever we are linking a local entrepreneur for this local food system or even a private sector entrepreneur to the larger food chain, the food safety will continue to dominate in the space. If the local entrepreneur or the producer kind of meets the minimum standards of set by authorities, definitely it will not only be good for the population at large, it will also give extra income to the producer as well as all the actors in the value chain. So I would always advise the safety aspects, the standards, and even for exports, when we talk about the sanitary and phytosanitary standards have to be met. And as you know, the importing countries are very strict on this standard. So the food safety standards and labeling also are now coming up. So they are all going to stay, and that will be in the interest of the consumers as well as the producers. That's my thinking.
Right. Since we don't have much a model in place, because we have not seen that in a very serious lenses, perhaps. Now, I think just an opinion from my side, social entrepreneurs or startups have now a big opportunity really to get into that space and come out with innovative solutions which are low cost, on field, at the farm level, and of course at the value chain level. So that would, I believe, come up as we move the next couple of years, isn't it?
Yes, you are absolutely right. Whether it is the social entrepreneurs or the startups, they have a bigger role in the days to come. And the government policies now have to be tuned to incentivize social enterprises and the technology startups, and that will prove rewarding. I have been also writing opinion pieces on that. And the development of agri-logistics, Kirtiji, you would have noticed that in the value chain, there were some initial disruptions during the lockdown period. So if we strengthen the agri logistics in the value chain, that will also be very good in the policy agenda. I'm very happy that under the stimulus package recently announced by the government of India, a separate agri infra fund has been created. You would have
Right,
also
right.
read and also noticed. So that will also for agri logistic and post harvest technologies. So if we kind of make use of these funds very effectively and purposefully, both by the private sector and wherever the local entrepreneurs and other actors come in. And but we need to also integrate the digital agriculture tools and all the digital tools like artificial intelligence or blockchains, whatever new tools are available to integrate there. So if we incentivize such logistical role played by even the e-commerce companies and the delivery companies, they are also coming up in large numbers in this food system sector. Once we start incentivizing through the government available funds and the private sector participation, they will literally pay off in the long run.
Okay, that is fantastic. And just since you touched upon the policy aspect, you are in the panel of Poshan Abhijan, and you've been spearheading, and you've been writing a lot in this particular topic. So from Poshan Abhijan as a platform at a highest level, anything that is important for our viewers to know how this been channelized, how that been, how things are happening at that level for this particular topic?
Yes, thank you, Kirtiji, for asking this. Let me be very frank that there is a conducive policy space now for promotion of the food systems approach in our country.
Right.
And not only in Poshan Abhijan or the Nutrition Mission, there are so many other initiatives by government which are in line with this. But because I come from a CG Institute, ICRISAT, I proudly represent ICRISAT today in your conversation. And in the one CGIR initiative also, the nutrition is at the forefront of its agenda. Right. And as I told you, ICRISAT is an international research institute. Our mandate crops are also kind of fitting into this particular stuff. I have a particular thing to say, which is missing from the government kind of reforms or government initiatives. They are there, but they need to get speeded up. Is the enhanced investments in the agri research and innovation, right? Even though ICAR, the National Agriculture Research System in India, is one of the largest in the world. As you know, ICAR has been one of the pioneering institutions in the green revolution and subsequently in attaining the food security and near self-sufficiency in many food grains. So, in my to my consensus mind, we need to enhance our investments or the public outlay for the research and investment, research and innovation, because we are now talking about nutrition and we wish to make the agriculture research ecosystem more nutrition sensitive. But we need to also invest more. Biofortification, you would have heard that now ICAR has also come up with many biofortified varieties, and so biofortification is a very sustainable solution to bring nutrition into the palate of the consumers. Right. So, for example, high zinc rich or protein rich rice varieties, vitamin A and protein rich maize varieties have already been bred by ICAR system. ICRISAT, the institute that I proudly represent, we have come up with India's first biofortified sorghum variety for India. It has been released in Maharashtra as Parvani Shakti variety. So biofortification and other nutrition sensitive agricultural research should take priority in my view. And as I told you, enhanced investments in agri research and innovation would be a win-win for everyone.
No, this is a very apt and important, because as a nation, I think we have to really gear up with modern research to back up our strategies. So I definitely value that. I think we cannot end or come to conclusion without mentioning about the FPO systems, because when we look at the local food systems, I believe the way government has come up with the policies around FPO for this particular topic, again from local economy development point of view, couple of remarks from you on this FPO as a pivot in this whole process, because my colleagues have told me very clearly you cannot avoid this topic in a conversation like this. I need your views.
Thank you, Kirti. I was also thinking that how could we miss out this particular important subject. In fact, the government also is prioritizing, and in fact, the policy priorities are there in the FPOs. You would have, you are very much aware that government has already announced for promotion of 10,000 FPOs throughout the country. And why FPOs or the farmer interest groups? Because since Indian agriculture is dominated by the small holders, as you know, as per the last census, 86% of the farm households, they are the small and marginal farms. So aggregating small farms could definitely help reduce the transaction costs for accessing the value chains. And this will also offset the skill disadvantages, because had there been only small farmer transacting with each other or to the market, it would not be possible. So that will benefit the farmers to access inputs, technology, or knowledge, or market. That will be win-win for both sides. So therefore, the FPOs or even the farmer interest groups in smaller groups, they are most desirable. Right. And as I told the government, it is very heartening that the government is promoting FPOs in a big way. It is a policy priority. I would just like to add, I heard Parmesh speak in your fast Ecosiate conversation. He also told that we need to handhold or support and build capacity amongst the participating farmers in the FPOs. This is extremely crucial. So just to promote in a small number, I mean a big number would not be appropriate. We need to also build capacity and also promote them in a very scientific, organic way. But I would just like to add the digital agriculture tools. I told you some time back. So digital agriculture tools could assist these producers to gather market intelligence and other information that they would like to have for income enhancement. And as I told you many times in the previous questions during our conversation, the demand for products from the local food systems, the post-COVID scenario is expected to rise, and the FPOs must seize this opportunity. So this is a very opportune time for the local entrepreneurs, FPOs, and even all the actors involved in the agri trade in the post-COVID scenario. I'm an optimist, so I see the brighter side. There are good things in store for everyone in this particular agri value chain space.
Okay, I think with this optimistic view, we can come to the conclusion of this conversation. And it has always been a pleasure to talk to you. And you touched upon like the importance of the topic, to its contextualization, to local economic development, to innovation, to research, to FPOs, and to local entrepreneurs, including private sector and consumer. I think whatever I wanted to ask you very well, put all your views into this conversation. I'm very thankful for that. And from Ecoshare side, I really thank you for coming to this conversation and sharing your views. I look forward to have more chats with you in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirtiji, for this opportunity. I also must appreciate the efforts of Ecoshare, you and your team, that you are finding pathways for local economy development, not only during this crisis, also beyond this pandemic. It's a very good initiative. I wish you good luck. And thank you so much for having me in this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.